Welcome to today's session of Shine a Light on Innovative Practices, Focus on the Spark, Creating Interactive Lessons. Let me introduce myself. My name is Susie Tonini, School Library Consultant with the Colorado State Library, and I'll be facilitating today's session. Joining me is my colleague Tia Frankish and the fabulous Tobye Ertelt, who will be presenting Focus on the Spark, Creating Interactive Lessons. This Shine a Light webinar focuses on elevating innovative and highly effective school librarianship programs and practices. This series, along with all of the state library's school library programming, is funded through a grant from the Federal Institute of Museum and Library Services, which means I can offer them to you completely free of charge. Before we wrap up today, I'll ask you to take a moment to please complete this brief survey, and I do promise it's brief. I'm going to drop that into the chat now so that you have it. And when you open it, you'll notice the date, presenter name, and session title are already filled in for you. If you're watching the recording after the fact, I also encourage you to please complete the survey and share your feedback with us too. All right, thanks so much for bearing with me through the logistics. Let's jump in. Tobye, thanks so much for offering your Hessel EdCon session to our virtual audience today. And I will turn it over to you to introduce yourself.
All right. I'm going to go to my share screen. We couldn't figure out how to make sure there was a window within the window so you could see me, but that's okay because I'm not very photogenic, so I don't think you need to see me. Welcome to my webinar. Our agenda, before I introduce myself, is introductions. I'm going to start with focusing on the work, then go through pathways and resources, and then we'll get to questions. I have been an educator for 27 years, and I've been a teacher librarian for 19. My name is Tobye Ertelt again. My name is Tobye Ertelt again. I taught ELA for 7 years in high school, and then I took the exciting adventure to become a digital teacher librarian. I moved to Jefferson County, and that's where I've been for the last 19 years. And being a librarian is probably the greatest adventure I've ever had. I thought teaching was going to be it for me, but I think librarianship is instead. And my passion for this particular subject of collaborative lessons with teachers comes from watching my students get so excited to learn about the topics and getting to have those moments with the teachers where we're like, look at what they're doing and look at the thought process that they're going through. So welcome. So I always want to start with where's the focus, because I always get asked questions like, how do you get teachers to do stuff with you? And it's a very sticky subject because, as we all know, teachers have a lot of content and not a lot of time to go through. So the very first thing is where I start with, you always have to have, look at what relationships you've already built. So you have your key people that you know that you could go to and say, hey, I have this idea for what you're doing, and kind of lay it out to them, and they will be receptive to it. I remember I told Susie and Tia once that this isn't about me. This is about all the people that I go up and give the crazy idea to. And instead of being like, you're insane for thinking of doing this, they're like, okay, let's give it a shot. And I've been very lucky that at my school, I've had several of them do that. And then once that process starts, once you have one teacher who's willing to do it with you, or a group of teachers willing to do it with you, and others start seeing how successful it is, then it just kind of builds on. So I always say, start with the key people. If you've got many key people, but you're struggling still to get in, my next one is, what's the essential question or content standard? So I always, I'm sure everyone has curriculum that they look at, and I always kind of look at, where's my in? So where is the ISTE standard or the durable skill standard that would fit perfectly with this content lesson that I could collaborate with them and kind of push in and help? and or which digital skills or digital tools can I use? And so then sometimes it's not about doing a huge collaboration. Sometimes it's about being like, hey, I see you're getting ready to do this in a couple weeks or a month or whatever. And then here's some things that we could do to add to it and help build those skills for the kids. And so I think that's always an important thing to also bring to the table, whether you're talking to your it people or whether you're talking to people who are not sure that they want to collaborate with you. And then the last focus that I always go are the gateway topics. There are natural entryways in from our research skills and our technology skills into the departments of ELA, social studies, and science. And also, there's some particular electives that you can really get some really good natural entryways into those topics. Again, most of it has to do with going back to those essential questions and where you can find the topics that you're teaching and that you're also able to push those skills or tools into. Oh, see, I'm all right to my first take a moment and drop in. So, when I was originally when we did this at Hessel, it was a workshop. So what I wanted to do is just give everyone kind of a minute to think about your library and your school. And these are the questions that I was just talking about. I think about when I go in, and maybe just take a minute, think about like where you might be able to drop in, or who's your it person that you can go say, here's a crazy idea, and just drop it into the chat. Or if you have a question, go ahead and drop the question in.
And that it person, I think it would be really helpful to know like what their role is in the school. And Tobye, one thing I just realized is there might be some folks joining us who aren't familiar with Hessel EdCon, which is our Colorado State conference for school librarians. And that's where
Okay.
she presented this.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes. Susie and the Colorado State Library put on an amazing conference every June. So it's just phenomenal. And you get to network and meet with a ton of uh, other school librarians. And we have amazing guest keynote speakers and just ideas that run fluid that whole day. It's amazing. So if you have time and want to come into the Hessel conference, it's a great conference.
So Erica dropped into the chat, the instructional coach at her school. She sits through all of the CASA meeting because she's in the enhancement rotation. And so she's who she looks to figure out what standards the grade levels are covering.
It's always a good one.
Strategy.
Yes. I work with my instructional coach quite a lot as well. And I think I saw someone said ELA teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That was my first it person. Was an ELA teacher.
Yeah, she like was always game. It didn't matter what I threw at her. She's like, yeah, let's give it a try. Oh, you want to try this gifted story with all of my students? Let's make it happen. How long do you want to do this for? Let's make it all happen. So yeah, you just have to go where the energy is.
Yeah.
I had the best luck at the elementary level with when they were covering social studies content.
That's a good point. It's always good to know where the ends are for that. All right. Well, I'm going to keep going because I don't want to take up people's time more than I need to. So when you're looking at the Spark, there's probably more than 3 pathways that you could take. But these are the 3 pathways I found are one, drawing the most teacher interest, and 2, that can give us the most bang for our buck with student focused learning. So the first is self-paced. And self-paced can be used for reviews or introductions of topics. It can also focus student research or student learning on a topic. And it also, it kind of ties to passion focused in the sense that with self-paced, what you can do is have avenues of specific interest into topics in which kids can go to and focus on more than others. And we're going to go more deeply into each of these in a second. The second one is to gamify. And gamify, usually, the minute you say that, it terrifies people because they're like, ooh, who wants to gamify? That's so much work. And it can be, but it is not necessarily more work than any other thing that we do. And so when I talk about gamifying, I specifically am focused on scenarios, game-focused learning, and badging. For some reason, it doesn't matter what grade level you're at, kindergarten through high school. If you're like, here's a sticker that proves that you're awesome, those kids are like, yes, I get a sticker. Look at this. I get this. Or, or here you get to have this and add up and you're leveling up. The minute you say level up in middle school and high school, they're like, you bet I am. So it's a really good tool to incentivize.
And then that's also true of adults.
I'm sure it is. And then the last one is the passion focused. And I'm going to start off by talking about our TED Ed experience, my TEDx Ed experience. But then as we go a little bit more deep into passion focused, I'll talk about how other ways in which you can use it, because I don't want to sound like I'm shilling for TED Ed. But it's a good entry point for many people. All right, so self-paced. In the picture, I actually have a screenshot of the digital citizenship challenge that I created for our middle schoolers. And this self-paced, the rules are that they must do the digital footprint door, but then they've got 4 other doors in which they can explore and look at how that works. And the teachers require that they do at least 3 of the 5 doors. And I'm actually I'm going to be upgrading this because the news and media literacy piece, I want to kind of extend a little bit more, but we want to add an AI door so that the kids can start learning a little bit about AI and ethical uses of it and things like how it can be damaging, just as damaging as it can be helpful, and kind of like guidelines on to help them use it effectively and not things like that. So that's in the works. It's just not there yet. So
Tobye, did you build it in PowerPoint or Google Slides?
It's a website. And at the end, cool. By the way, all of the collaborations I'm talking about, I've put on a sheet for you guys that at the end of the thing, it's going to be in the chat. So you guys can access all my materials. So you don't have to be sitting there going, oh my gosh, how do I get this? Because it's there for you. I'm a 100% believer in stealing people's work and making it better and sharing, and because gosh, we all have too much to do. So why not? If something's cool, use it for everybody. So in this case, I did, like I said, a website with the doors. The thing about self-paced is it's highly engaging for the students. It is low collaboration usually between you and the teacher, because typically your role in this is that you're building the format and the system for the self-paced role, but you're not necessarily co-teaching. You're usually either facilitating or the teacher chooses to facilitate, and you're just kind of there as an extra. But, and I just saw, I went through this 6 times and now I just see a spelling error. It's not loaned, it's load. Geez, sorry, you guys. But the couple things I do love about the self-paced program, one is that it does allow for high student choice. 2, it allows for students to move at their own pace, so it gives some differentiation. And within this, I have scaffolded note catchers and things for the kids as well. And the other thing about self-paced is it allows for you to do a multimedia platform if you choose. And you're able to insert teacher check-ins depending on which platform you use. I created some within the web page, but if you're using other types of platforms such as not Kahoot, sorry guys, It's a Wednesday after school, and it
We
just left my
know.
brain.
We're right there with you, Toby.
Mhm.
Oh,
I mean,
book
that's
it.
like being 50 years old right now for me. So
Yes, me
Right?
too. So you can do things like Book It, or if you're able to use Edpuzzle, things like that. You can build all of this within multiple platforms like that. Are there any questions about self-paced?
and I'll just add that in those materials that Toby's going to share with you is a really robust lesson plan that demonstrates how she's using this website to align with all of the standards. So it's really excellent work.
I
Yeah,
did try as much as possible to include the lesson plans for everybody as well, so that you had that too. We're switching in my district. We're switching from ISTE standards to durable skills, and so I'm reworking a lot of stuff to fit that model a little bit more. All right, the next is the Gamify, and this is probably my best and most common um, tool that I use when I do it. I do self-paced quite a bit, but I do gamify a ton. Um, and I put the definition down at the bottom because sometimes when you hear the word gamify, you think you have to like be a UXL designer and be able to like create games for the kids to do. And that's actually not really the point of gamifying in education. So I put that down there so that people could kind of look at that. This is gamifying is also where I see my collaboration and my co-teaching with the content teachers the strongest because you kind of have to work side by side to get all of this done. In the picture, I've got my industrialism monopoly game board picture for the factory workers. Uh, but I've done game boards. I've done so that's Monopoly. I've done Game of Life Middle Ages and Game of Life Aztecs, which is it's just a hoot because at the end, like half the people die and they're like, "Man, Miss Earl," and I'm like, "I can't help it. Like that's just how it goes." And I really love in the Middle Ages. They're like, "Miss Earl, uh, so cloves and diamonds are land and money." And my favorite thing is this, they'll be like, "Miss Earl, I am minus 6 diamonds. How is that even possible?" And I'm like, "Have you heard of the word debt?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, welcome to debt. You have debt. And they're like, "This stinks." And I'm like, "Yeah, yes, it does." And so it's like it's fun on two levels. One, because they're learning about the Middle Ages and what that life was like for each kind of level of the thing, but it's also like a real life. Like, yeah, we still have debt. Like that concept hasn't gone away. And so it's good. And so like I said, that's my game board model. I tend to choose the Game of Life and Monopoly, but I actually am working on a Shoots and Ladders version for next year as well. Um, the the other gamifying I really love is simulations. And partially the reason I like the simulations is because um, it just really strikes a chord with the kids. Um, it's that like in elementary school, I always forget what it's called, but it's the learning through play process. There was like a technical term. Like I said, I've been doing this for 27 years and the terms changed 6 times, so I'm not really sure what it is anymore. But it's that learning through play part. And we lose that in secondary a lot because we're so tied down to how much curriculum we have to go through. So doing the simulations for me, I think is giving the kids that opportunity to learn through problem-based learning and project-based learning and through simulation and putting themselves in that shoe. So I think probably my most famous simulation at this point is the murder mystery, where we're learning research skills through the murder mystery. But this year I've added escape rooms simulations, and through that we used it through for text features, and I actually have not updated it, so that one's not up there yet. But I'm more than happy if someone wants it, I'll share it. But that one needs some heavy redoing because I used AI for a lot of the pictures and whew, found out real quickly how I needed to change things. But with the simulations, the best part is just the kids actively engage and they get the murder mystery, for example, the kids actually go up to teachers because all of the teachers are suspects. For every class, it's different. And so they literally will walk up to a teacher and be like, you said this. Is that true or not? And so like before we even start the murder mystery, I have to send an email out to the teachers and say, if a student comes up and asks a question, you have to say, I have given my official statement and on advice from my lawyer, I am not allowed to say anything else because the kids get really like persistent with them. But like I have one teacher, it's his favorite time of year. And this year he wasn't even a suspect, but he came in when his class, when the kids from the majority of his classes were in here, he came in running with a hammer. He stopped, laughed maniacally, and then just kept running. And all the kids were like, wait, what does that mean? And I'm like, it means that he's insane. But then
No,
they were
it
like,
just means that middle school teachers are a special breed.
they are indeed. But yeah, so simulations I find are very, very good. And even though I think escape rooms take the best of it, they're part simulation, part gaming. And it's exciting. And then of course, like I said, the last part is badging, leveling up and giving that gives those competitive kids like the drive to try and get farther. Like, am I beating so and so? Am I getting the badge that I want? And how do I do this? And so I guess the way I look at gamifying is anything that's going to pique their interest in the topic and anything that's going to push them. And so for the badging, I know there's a lot of electronic badging out there, but I have literally just gone on to Amazon or Oriental Train Company and bought like batches of stickers. And then I just pull them and I'm like, these are the stickers that level up here. And these are the stickers, or I have some teachers that do the stamps. They have stamps that they use and they have a passport book. And so the kids, every time they get a passport, then they get bragging rights or they get an extra it always depends on what we have, but like one of them is having lunch with your favorite teacher or things that are low cost but still available. And so that's kind of the gamifying. Uh-huh. I
Can
see
you give
him.
us an example of, well, actually, if I can ask for two, so one example of how the badging was related to the content that you were teaching?
Yeah, so one of the badgings that we did uh, is for uh, sorry, industrialism monopoly. I'm like looking straight at it and I'm like, what is that? So we have them do the game board, and the game board is set up so that it's teaching them what industrialism monopoly was. And so they win or lose. But then after that, what we did was we had certain simulations set up for them. So we had Ellis Island, and we had factory working assembly line where they had to glue make a paper truck, which let me tell you, I'm slightly worried because they glue sticks are hard in middle school and I don't know why. But we have that, and then we have like tenement buildings, and so they have to figure out, like they have to puzzle together what that meant for as like a whole picture, given what they learned in the game of Monopoly. Like, what does that look like here? And then so for each thing that they accomplished, like figuring out that Ellis Island, a lot of those people, um, a lot of those people didn't speak English. So when they went there, they couldn't answer the questions, and like the frustration and how some of them were stuck there for days. So like learning that got them the I think we called it the first timer badge. And then they just kept building, and the more badges you got. So at the end, then the teacher was like, if you got 6 badges, then you get this. And I honestly can't remember what he did for all of them. The grand prize was they got a pizza, like they got to invite 3 friends for a pizza party. So that kind of stuff.
Oh, nice.
I was gonna say the one that I'm working on now for is migration for the Russians, the Polynesians, I forget, there's three of them, and we're working on badging, like, how long do you survive? If you got set back, how did you fix it to get better? Because we all have setbacks, and so the goal of the game is not that they make it through with unscathed, but that they actually hit roadblocks that are seem insurmountable, and then how do you figure out how to get around? And so they get badges for that, and then at the end, the badges put you on your, where are you on your tribe? Are you the chief? Did you get the most badges? Are you the cook? Are you the, like, so that they can, and then that goes into their next unit.
Great. Is there, and one question that came from the chat is, have you ever taken video of this in action, or would you be willing to for your next?
I've never taken video for it.
I think it would
I
be
sure can.
fascinating to see students in action doing the demonstrations so that
Yes,
that others can
can
replicate
use
it.
it.
Yeah.
I can certainly do it. I never have done it, but I can certainly video it. It's a lot of fun. But I mean, it's and again, in gamifying, I think I saw somewhere about breakout boxes, doing escape rooms and breakout boxes. Um, I've made all of my breakout boxes through Home Depot and Amazon and through things like that. Um, because the actual breakout boxes are extremely expensive and they're hard
Yeah.
to and when the locks break, it's hard to kind of go through that. So um
Yeah, I bought the boxes and then they wanted us to subscribe to their lesson plans.
uh-huh.
That's where the real expense is like it's $350 a year for one user to subscribe to the lesson plans, and I just never had the money to do that. But that was back when they were first getting started, so the boxes and all the locks were only $99 at that point. I don't even know what they cost now, but I had one breakout box, so I knew how to do a whole class on the same box instead of individual students. And so a lock only gets unlocked once all the teams have unlocked it. And then once all the teams have unlocked it, then you check it off. And then
That's awesome.
people start working, they can work as fast as they want to. And if a team finishes all the locks, they obviously still win. But the box itself doesn't get opened until all the teams have unlocked all the locks. And so there's some camaraderie there as far as like, yeah, they'll compete to be the first team finished, but they will um, then support their peers in helping them solve the puzzles and learn what they need to learn in order to finish up the next. So, yeah, because I only had one box for my classroom. So it wasn't like I could put six boxes out and have
Mhm.
six different individual games going on. It was impossible to do that. Like it was too expensive.
Yeah.
And Toby, if I can ask one last question before we move
Uh-huh.
on from gamification, looking at the Incan example, the game of life, and I dropped that into the chat as well. When I'm looking at the game board and reading through all that's been created here, can you just give us a little bit of like behind the scenes? How much did you create of this? What did that collaboration look like between you and the content area teacher?
Mhm. So um you know, you can't be the expert of everything when when you're collaborating. So you have to work really closely with your content teachers because they are the experts, so they can give you the resources. And that's so like I say to them, like, what do you have the kids read? Like, what are their sources for when they're reading about this stuff? What sources are you using as you're teaching it? So that helps me. Like, we go through what they see as important aspects of the thing, because again, uh, especially in social studies, it's a survey class until you get to high school or until you get to college. Like, there's no time at any of the K pre-K 12 things for it to be a really in-depth lesson. So it's all survey. So you have to kind of pick and choose where your focuses are going to be for that period or for that learning. And so you talk about, like, okay, so what are the important things you want us to hit? And then what are the materials you're giving them? And then when I do that, then I kind of go and I look and I research specifics for those things. And then I send that back to the teacher and I'm like, okay, so here's some more stuff I found and this is what I'm thinking it's going to look like. And so as we go through the pieces of the game, whatever the game is, or the simulation, we're like, okay, these are the things we want to focus on. Here's what this looks like. And then I go to work on building the actual format. So if it's a game board, I build the game board. If it's a simulation, I build a simulation. And then after I've kind of created the template or the outline or whatever, I send it back and I say, okay, here's what I've got. What do you guys want to change? And so a lot of times we don't get to do face-to-face meetings. That's just the way of the world, right? So we do a lot of emailing or a lot of just like editing and group documents and texting and things like that to get the finished product. And once I've gotten that, then I do all of the things to connect it. And it's a little bit, the first time you make it's like any major project, like the first time you're doing it, it's a lot of front loading on your part. You're building a lot of it. But after it's made, it moves seamlessly. So you're able to make tweaks and change things. It's a lot easier. And then, there's always the chance that you'll have a teacher who wants to change something. So for like my Middle Ages one, the game board used to be much bigger. Well, we had to shrink the time. So you can't do the game board as big. So then it was, okay, so what do we want to cut out? What do we think is less important for them to learn about at this time? And you cut it out and you change it around. And I feel like every year is a learning year. And so you always change your ad. Does that answer the question?
That's super helpful. Yes, thanks.
Okay. All right. So our last one is passion focused. And like I said, I was going to start with the TED Ed because that's actually where I started and really started thinking about passion focused. I was a TED Ed innovative educator. And so I had to create my own TED Talk and go through that process. And it's terrifying, absolutely terrifying. But in the process, you also learn about how they have this format for student talks. And the best thing in the entire world was we got flown out to New York City to the main TED stage. And so the day one was we got to watch all of the kids do their TED Talks. And then day two was our day to go do the TED Talks. And it's really hard to be like, I don't think I can do this when you watch a 8-year-old get up and do a TED Talk about math. And he blew me away. He was just so darn cute and he was so confident in how he talked. But like sometimes I'll even see, like it'll come up on my feed, one of the TED Talks of the kids that I saw. They all were just so phenomenal and they had such amazing ideas and amazing statements. And so when I came back, again, crazy idea, went to my ELA teachers. I was like, hey, listen, so speaking is part of our standards for ELA. Hey, let's try doing this. And that really led us down a passion, like, what's a passion you have? And I think one of the things that, like I said, the one that blew me away was the 8-year-old. But I think a lot of times in schools, we don't get to ask the kids. Like we might be like, oh, you love soccer. That's great. But we don't get to ask about the passion part of it. Like, what do you really care about and why? Like, what would you like the world to know about this topic? So we actually did TED Ed student talks for 3 years. And then COVID hit and I lost my teacher group that did that a lot. But it's kind of morphed. And so now, wow, another spelling error. I hate when you find those when you're presenting. So we now have for our ALP students, we have an advisement homeroom type thing at our school. And so the ALP students get pulled once a month to work on because they have to set a goal for themselves and meet it by the end of the year. And so instead of having them do something like, I'm going to read this many books, or I'm going to excel and get to this level of math or whatever, what we did instead was what is a passion you have that's focused in on wherever their uh, LP highlights are. And so like I have one student who's doing Battle of the Books with me this year, which is a district-wide program. And she's doing it because she's like, I love to read and I can't wait to see how like this works and like how it all looks. And so she's doing that. We have a student who they love math, but they're trying to build they're trying to use geometry and algebra basics to build a functional like personal, I'm not really sure if it's compost or recycle, but like they've got a whole plan. They've got like they're doing like a prototype and it's probably going to fail. But uh, I think the thing with it is that it allows them to follow a passion. And anytime we can give that opportunity to them, I think that's important. And then at the end of school, we have showcases for each grade level, and they get to go and look at each other's projects, question each other, and it's really cool because you get to see how sometimes they spark another idea. So they'll look at someone will give their little presentation. They'll be like, "Did you ever think of this?" And they'll be like, "No," and then the two of them get going, and it's a great thing.
And Tobye, if I can ask a clarifying question, was there a template for the student TED Talks?
Yes, there is a template for the TED Ed. If you want to do TED Ed, they're always looking for teachers to join the TED Ed system, but they actually have it takes you step by step through every piece of it, including teaching kids how to talk publicly and like how to give constructive feedback. It's a pretty explicit program actually.
Is that template or resources that included in the materials that you have, the links that you have, or is that something that we could find on the open internet?
It is not on my doc. It's if you go to TED Ed Talk Student Talks though, it will give you the link to get all that information.
Okay, I'll include that in the materials when we follow up. Thanks, Tobye.
Yep. And again, the passion focused is a very collaborative and co-teacher thing. In fact, we have mentor teachers for the kids, so it's more than just the ALP director and me working on it. Like they work with other teachers in the building, and I think it's a very positive thing. And even if you don't use TED Ed, if you look at the basic outline of what they do, you can create your own. Oh, and I did link it in the presentation, the TED Ed student talks. It is linked in my presentation as well, so you can get to it. And I think, I think that takes me to my last slides, which is, I always say no idea is a bad idea. And so whenever a teacher comes to me, because I do have teachers that come to me and are like, we want to do this, but we have no idea how to do it and no time. Can you figure out how to do this? And so I tell people it used to be look and steal used to be the thing that they say. And I call it always explore and adapt because I don't like the word steal. I think that we as teachers, we're built on sharing ideas and building each other up. So explore and adapt. If you have an idea, start brainstorming a design. At the Hessel conference, actually, one of the ladies, she was trying to do in elementary, they've got the versus books like Pit Viper versus Badger, like who would win. And so she was trying to create with the science teacher, have the kids create their own versus such and such versus such and such in small groups, but she wasn't sure how to do the groups and make them effective. And I said, well, why don't you? So like she and I were brainstorming and I said to her, I go, you need a zookeeper, you need a veterinarian, you need a feeder, you need and so we came up with 4 positions that the kids could each be a role in that and then what each role meant. So like if you're the veterinarian, you have to look at their health and their environment, like what's going on. And if you're the zookeeper, you've got to look at like what are their what are the pros and cons, like what defensive techniques and things like that. So we went through that whole thing in like 10, 15 minutes. And it was like the most, I love it because like the energy, because you're like, oh, and then we could do this. And like, that's just the best feeling ever when you've got a collaborative teacher and you're like, yeah, let's try this. So working with your co-teacher or your colleague to build it. And then, like I said, I put my not complete list of collaborations, and please use it, adapt it, contact me, email me. I think on the last slide, I have my email up there. Email me anything you need. Or if you're looking for someone, if you yourself don't have a collaborative partner that you can talk to about anything, I am more than happy to try my best, because I will admit that I'm not always the most creative person in the room. So, but anything to help. And that takes us to the end. So if there's any other questions or anything,
I love it when there's time at the end. So this is your chance to, if you're welcome to come off mute and ask Tobye a question, or you can drop a question in the chat. And while you're thinking of questions, just a reminder, we would love it if you could provide us feedback through our survey. I promise you, I read each and every one and really value what you all tell me. So I appreciate in advance taking the time to do that. Any questions for Tobye?
I do have a question. Tobye, have you ever gotten like pushback from your administrators about how long some of these simulations take?
Actually, not yet.
It's great.
What we have found though is what happens is it's actually in the process of looking at the teachers' schedules. It's usually the teachers and I that come to the decision. So originally, when we did Silk Road, it was 5 days. Silk Road's now 3 days. Same thing with Middle Ages. It used to be a 5-day thing. Now it's a 3-day thing. Really, the murder mystery is the only thing that's still a full 5 days. And that's because we pack a lot into it. But I think really a lot of the teachers are very, very good at knowing beforehand how much time they can stretch. And I'm very blessed in that my administrators really believe, in fact, my current one, we had a conversation because I was like, I'm afraid with all of the new curriculum that's coming down, I'm going to be like, all of this stuff's going to be pushed out of the way. And he said it best. He goes, no, because the art and craft of teaching is important. And he said, so he specifically has told the teachers that that they can have they can have 20% wiggle room in the curriculum schedule, to make sure, because he said, no one's going to remember reading or doing a workbook thing on the Outsiders. Like, no one's going to remember doing workbook or chapter reviews of that, but they're going to remember the murder mystery. And so I really feel like anytime we do these things and our administration really realizes the value of the kids getting pushed, and getting that incentive and that excitement about whatever the topic is.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I'm not going to lie. I know that there are some people that their administration is not like that, but he actually quoted, because the art and craft of teaching actually comes from a book that I just don't know what it is right now off the top of my head, but it's
after 5 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. It's all good.
So anyway, I'll try and find it so I can send it to Susie so she can look at it. But it's always a good, when he said it to me, and then he was telling me like the statistics on something, and I thought, oh my gosh. And so I went and like found the book and did a quick read, and it's a good argument for those who don't have as supportive people.
Erica, do you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Toby. I'm
Hi.
really struggling with the visualization of your use of game boards with your lessons. And I heard you talk about the paper trucks,
Uh-huh.
but is it all like physical, like the piece of the game board, like a spot on the game board is an
No.
assignment going? Like, how does that work?
Here, let me see if I can real quick. I'll see if I can pull it up so I can show it to you. Um,
Susie put a sample in the chat for you.
Thank you.
you know, give me a second here. I'm just gonna go over here and do it this way. I don't know which sample Susie put
Would
in.
the Incan Empire, would that one be okay to share?
Oh, yeah, you can totally show that. I was just going to
Okay.
pull up my Game of Life one for the Middle Ages, actually,
Okay,
if that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And let me see if I can, just because that's the one that's closest
I'm
to where.
glad you're, yeah. So Eric, I'm glad you asked because I was like trying to figure out, well, how do they move around the board?
Yes.
And like, admittedly, I didn't read all the rules because there are rules. I was trying to pay attention, so I didn't read the rules. So, but I'm sure that Toby can explain it to us really quickly.
All right, so I'm just showing my board right now. So this is the Game of Life for the Middle Ages. So this is the one I just finished last week. And so it is a multi-step process for sure. And so the first is they have to choose their roles, and then they have to read about their character role and find out stuff. And then we talk about their assets, and that's this is the one where they found out they have debt, especially the peasants. They're like, "How are we ever going to get out of this debt?" And I'm like, "Never! You're a peasant. You will die poor." But I don't tell them that because that ruins the game for them.
And
But
Toby, are they in small groups and each
they
one
are.
chooses a role? And so they'll
Yeah, they're groups of 4.
Okay.
In this particular game, I restrict it to teams of 4. Sometimes there's teams of 3 because we have odd numbers. But I do that on purpose because of the way the game's set up. And then when you go to the game, this is the game board, and I tell them where they're starting to end, and then they just so the rules of the game really are it's not a true game board because they don't get to roll the dice. I used to have a true game board style, but with the changing of certain things, they don't have really good interactive spin boards or dice anymore. And so with that, I kind of had to change things. And so they click on the thing and they get to read, they get their information, and then they get to find out what happens, and then they go back to the game board. And so that's
there's
kind
a
of
different outcome for each role.
there is a different
Each
outcome
piece
for
of the
each
board.
role.
Okay.
Yep. And then they have here's the note catcher. So they've got a note catcher, and the end game of this particular game is that they have to decide if the Middle Ages is indeed the Dark Ages or if it's not the Dark Ages. Because we go over on the website, we talk about it, and so they have to define it, and so then they just go through, and so they pick their person, they write down their information, and then as they go through the blocks, they have to have evidence that supports it was the Dark Ages, it wasn't the Dark Ages, and then they're taking stock of what they've gained and lost as their character. And then at the end of the game, they write down everyone's results to find out who wins. And of course, the Lord wins every time because he's the Lord and he's wealthy. And then we look at, and then we do follow-up questions of like who won the game, look at their assets versus other assets, like how did they win? And then the third question is how does the game mirror what you learned about the Middle Ages? How does it simulate or mirror what you learned from the experiences? And that's, to me, that's a really important connection for them to make. Because sometimes they get so wrapped up in the game, they forget to do the other parts. We have to go back and be like, no, go back and do that. And then clear statements, what we use, other people use PEAs or other things. And then they have to write an argumentative statement using the evidence from above. So
Real quick, clear statement's that's a new ed phrase for me. What's how do you define your district?
Claim, evidence, and reasoning.
Oh, okay, makes sense.
Claim, evidence, and reasoning. So I don't know if that answered Erica's question, but or not, but that's kind of how I use the game boards.
Yeah, I'm taking all of this information back to other librarians in my district.
You
And
go,
so
girl.
I'm just trying to like understand how it works to be able to explain it to somebody else.
Hey, listen, anytime you bring it back, you can let me know, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that come up.
Okay, sweet.
Or even if you need me to come on a quick Zoom and I can just be like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And you can ask the questions. I think on the game board, I put several of them down. But really what I like to do with the game boards, the Monopoly and the Game of Life looks a little bit different, but really it's storytelling. It's them going around learning factual information about history, and then it's a story about what happens to a person. So it connects them emotionally to the history. That's really what it is.
Perspective taking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
Tobye,
one of those
sorry.
that's one of those soft skills that they want kids to learn. And it's not even a soft skill, it's like an essential life skill that children need in order to be successful in day-to-day life. Like,
Yeah.
being able to see life from a variety of different perspectives.
Yeah, I think
magic.
it's an empathy building thing, in a way that's not threatening.
Yeah.
Is kind of.
Tobye,
I drew the
you know,
peasant straw.
I know we're all thinking like how much students must enjoy this interactive hands-on approach. Have you found a way to capture that through data, whether it's qualitative and interviewing students after an activity like this, or being able to show, any kind of achievement results? Is there any kind of data that you've found can help maybe teachers who are slow adopters?
So we do have, because of the clear responses, because we've got assessments that come with all of these, we have seen an increase in understanding, in supporting the evidence and the arguments, as opposed to when we've done it before, when they just learn it and then come in. We had a 10% increase in understanding the concepts, and a 10% increase in their articulation in the reasoning. So not just that they could prove the evidence, but especially in middle school, they have a hard time in their reasoning. They're like, because I just said this evidence just proves it, and they don't. And so being able to be like, and when this happens, this is what, so we do see an increase in that perspective. It's a qualitative, not a, it's a quantitative, not a qualitative. And I know at least for the Incan game board, for them, what they have found is that the kids are actually able to, it kind of leads them more to their passion project idea, because what they found is that after they do that, the kids like specifically pick certain things that they want to learn more about. So
amazing.
We have probably time for one last question. If anybody has one last burning question.
So sorry, I'm the question asker.
We love it, Erica. Bring it.
I know we talked about the TED student talks for you said it was their passion project.
Yeah.
Did you use, is there any other things you've used to fit in that ideal of it being a passion project that wasn't related to the TED student talks?
Yes. So Simon Sinek has a fabulous speech. I'm trying to remember. I have it somewhere, and I'm trying to think of where I have it saved.
Are you saying Sinek?
Simon
Simon
Sinek.
Thank you. Sorry.
Sinek. And he gave it to a youth leadership conference. And I absolutely adore it because he gives he gives five
Is it
I'm
how
gonna
to
have
make
to
impact?
hold on. The five is the five whys. No, sorry. I think it's the five whys, but I can't remember. Oh, maybe it's find your why. Um, I'll have to get back to you guys on this. I'll send it to Susie so she can get it out to you. But I believe that it's either the find your why or the five whys. Um, oh. Here you go. I lied. It's not even that. It's possibly where I possibly plagiarized the title of my presentation now that I saw that. I just put the YouTube video in there. It says 5 rules to follow as you find your spark. And this is the one he gave to, like I said, a youth leadership um, conference. It's astounding, just like how he breaks it down in a way that I think is very realistic and very easy to grasp for all students. And it's a game changer. So I usually show this one to the kids first. I show this video to the kids, and then I give them I gave them a graphic organizer that had like 5 things. So what are 5 things that are going to spark your why? After you've watched this video, what are 5 things, what of the 5 rules, like what speaks to you, what sparks your interest, what gets you there? And that really helps them, because I think a lot of times there's a lot of things kids are interested in, but finding that one thing that's truly their passion is sometimes hard. And so after watching this, I had them, like I said, do the thing. And I will have to search my archives because it's been a while since we've used this particular format. But I will find the graphic organizer. You can have it all. It's just fabulous. And it's a great way for them to just see ideas. And I do use some of the TED Ed student talks to also show how they use their passion. But we just don't have time to use the TED Ed model anymore because it's a pretty in-depth model. But I do use some of their talks. There's one kid, he's one of the ones I got to see. He and his team, they literally blew up his dad's grill. What they were trying to do is figure out how to recycle tire and rubber to make it something so it's not killing our planet. And his entire talk is about pushing yourself and not letting the grills blowing up deter you. And he and his friends actually created a recycle program that they're like set for life in college. They got a great system, and there's like 3 countries they patented it. They got a patent lawyer came through, and so they're set for college as far as that goes, and they're probably in college now because it was a while ago. But time flies. But that YouTube is definitely is a good way to get them started on that passion.
That's the perfect segue. Time does fly. It is actually time. We're going to shower you with virtual hearts and applause. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Tobye, for sharing your time and talent.
No problem. And like I said, if anyone ever needs any information or explanation, I'm happy to give it. So
thanks. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you're watching us from the recording, thanks so much for joining us online, and we'll hope to see you at the next Shine a Light. Good night, everyone.
Take care.